Hello and welcome to Monument Cycling. I'm Owen Lake. I'm joined by Harry Johnson. Harry, how's it going?
Hello, it's going very well. I'm getting ready for one of my very few cyclocross races tomorrow in the Wessex League. It's on a horse showground. Should be good fun. No rain. I only do cyclocross when there's no rain because I'm soft and proud.
Cyclocross in the rain is the best, man.
No. Have you done cyclocross in the rain?
No, but I've stood and watched it, so you'll be fine.
Exactly. You do one and then tell me how they are. We'll get you to do one of the national series. I sort of stood there with a microphone talking about it.
On the subject of cyclocross, though.
Exactly. This week we've got lots of fun stuff to talk about, as usual. We're going to do an intro talking about TV.Monument Cycling and why you should give us a little bit of money. We're going to talk about cyclocross and Thomas Mean and how he's doing very well and why isn't he on a better team. We're going to talk about some local elite teams, proper grassroots, British racing, basically what this podcast is about, elevating the profile of these teams and riders. A great British Conti article that came out recently about the cost of hosting one of these kind of grassroots national B-level races. We're going to talk about some riders that have made it to WorldTour, namely Ollie Stockwell as the most recent one. INEOS probably have a new dev team, but it's not British. Interesting. And we'll round it out by talking about ITV no longer showing the Tour de France after Discovery Eurosport have exclusive British broadcasting rights. And then we'll talk about TV.Monument Cycling a little bit more. So, you follow cyclocross a lot more closely than I do, especially UK riders. Why is Thomas Mean so good and not on a professional team?
I think my silence speaks volumes there, doesn't it? He is incredible.
Who is Thomas Mean?
Thomas Mean is firstly, he's a really nice guy. He is possibly the best cyclocross rider domestically right now. He's always fighting with riders like Joe Blackmore and Cameron Mason, particularly on like an international level, and those two have stepped up now. Blackmore famously to Israel Premier Tech and Cam Mason with Alpecin. Thomas Mean is like the best domestic rider, hands down. He wins almost every single national series round. He wins abroad as well. And he's pretty much almost like the rider who got away. That's what it feels like sometimes in terms of the road scene. He was with Sun God in 80-85 when they folded. And then he stepped away from that and now rides for Hope Factory Racing on the cyclocross scene. And every single time he wins, it's like, man, this guy's incredible. You're looking at the results and wondering, why is this guy not not on a big pro team? So yeah, he's really good rider, really nice guy, and I want to see him step up, to be honest.
Yeah, pretty much. He's still very young, probably in his prime, 25. Yeah. Still plenty of opportunity to move up onto a bigger team. He's recently won a C2 level cyclocross race in France, the Rivabella Cross. I assume that's quite a big race. He came 11th in the Koppenberg Cross, a massive cyclocross race in Belgium, on Koppenberg, the famous climb they go up in the Tour of Flanders. And he's won all the national series rounds so far in the UK, like you said. He also won the national championships for cyclocross 2 years ago in 2022, and then last year came second to, of course, Cam Mason. But yeah, it's really positive, obviously, seeing him do well abroad. We've seen the likes of Tom Pidcock rise through those sort of ranks and go on to do great stuff at INEOS. So yeah, hopefully he does find a place for himself.
Yeah, I think the thing that's always, and we spoke a little bit about this before, is like whether he wants to race as a pro on the road anymore as well. I think people forget that, yes, while you can go and race the Tour de France, and it's like the ultimate goal, it's not everyone's goal. And we have to ask, and I really want to sit down and ask him one day, like, hey, what is your goal in cycling? And he may just want to be really good at cyclocross. He may want to stay at home. I know I would really struggle with being a professional cyclist. I'm married. If I had to be away from my wife and like my family home for 100, 200 days of the year, I'd really struggle with that. And not everyone wants to do that. So it could be the case that he doesn't want to race abroad, and actually he's happy racing effectively as a semi-pro pro in the UK. But I don't really know. And it kind of raises the question of like the wider question of like what is the ultimate goal in cycling? Does it always have to be racing the Tour de France, or should we have a healthy scene here?
Yeah, you bring up a good point. Like I think it'd be really healthy if he is just making a living. I don't know whether he works alongside it, maybe part time. But I mean, if he's winning these level of cyclocross races, getting in the top 11, I imagine he's making a decent amount of prize money, some funding from sponsors and teams. Like, yeah, I think it's good that there's a rider that is able to kind of do that sustainably. Like he's been doing it for a few years now. Yeah, hopefully he either kicks on or is. I mean, as long as he's happy, that's the. He's obviously getting good results and doing well at the races he wants to do well at. Like 11th at Koppenberg Cross, he was only within 3 minutes of Lars van der Haar, who won. So yeah, plenty of movement there.
That's an insane level as well to be racing at, and I think people like that's one of the things you don't often see. Like when I know I speak a lot with the Spectra guys, so that'll be like Dan Barnes and Toby Barnes in particular, and Simon Wiley. Like they're usually those 2nd to 5th positions behind Thomas Main, and it's like it's tough for them as well. Like when I'm turning up, and if it's a course that suits Thomas, you're like, oh, okay, this is going to be a tough race, and he may well absolutely spank me. So it would be really nice. But they, to be fair, are very good riders, and they're stepping up each year. Often they close the gap. I'd love to see like a really strong British cyclocross scene where you've got riders like Thomas Main, you've got riders like Toby Barnes fighting against each other, and you effectively have like a domestic version of that Wout van Aert, Mathieu van der Poel rivalry, if you know what I mean. Yeah,
exactly. I think it might seem a little bit negative, like he's trouncing the National Series at the moment. Like he's very comfortably. I mean, I'm sure it's not easy, but he's very comfortably winning the rounds. I think that is a good thing in the long term. In the short term, it's a little bit boring. Sorry, Thomas. But when you've got that level of rider that's there, eventually it'll encourage other high-level riders to be like, maybe a little bit annoyed that he's winning them so easily, be like, oh, I could win those. And then that's when you get people turning up trying to beat Thomas, and then suddenly you've got 5-10 riders at that level all battling out again. So yeah, I think it's a positive thing in the long term. I'm sure we'll chat to him on the pod eventually.
Yeah, I'll try my best.
Back to the road, elite teams. So where do elite development teams sit in the ladder of British cycling teams, Owen?
They are just below the UCI continental rank, which is the 3rd rank on the UCI ladder, and just above a club team, really. The idea is that there's some criteria you have to hit. You have to, take them to a certain number of races. You have to have a certain level of backing for your riders. And often those are the teams that we look at and go like, oh, okay, yeah, they're winning a lot, or you might have like St. Piran, for instance, your big team on the men's side, St. Piran and Trinity. And then you'll see teams like, Richardson's having riders up there. Or on the women's side, you'll see like Loughborough Lightning almost have the backing of a full UCI team and the budget to match. But for whatever reason, they're not a UCI team, so they want to, they'll be an elite dev team instead. So they kind of sit in that in-between zone.
Yeah, very, very well put. It's my favourite level of racing. I mean, you can have club teams that aren't technically an elite development team that's still on the same level, still doing the same kind of rides, but these are the teams that you'll see that we saw battling out at the National Series. It's the sort of riders that are getting top 5s pretty consistently, top of the rankings on BC. I just wanted to talk about Primera Team Jobs, which is a team that's fairly local to me. I race them a lot, have done for the last kind of 6 years probably. They have made a few massive signings for 2025, and I think they're going to be, as much as I have a personal rivalry with them, I do really like their setup. It's run by a guy called Jason Galt, who owns Team Jobs, who sponsor and fund the team, along with Primera, the bike shop down in Bournemouth. So for 2025, they've signed Gabe Della, recently of Stolen Goat race team and 5th at the National Hill Climb Champs. Really, really strong guy, also quite local to me. Josh Housley, who I think was 3rd overall this year on points, either British Conti points or British cycling points. So extremely strong rider again. And Steve Lampier.
Yeah, that's a big one.
Experienced head. You've got a mix of young blood and an experienced head. Returning to racing. Well, he returned to racing this year. Looking to guide Primera. Yeah, I think they're going to be a bit of a force in some National A races next year.
How do you think they're going to fare against the more established teams?
I think they don't quite have the depth that some of the bigger teams have. They don't quite have the experience. I say the experience. The team doesn't have the experience of racing kind of consistently top 10 at the National Series. But the riders that they've just signed do. Like Josh Housley could easily be up there next year in the National Series. Steve Lampier has obviously been up there before as both a rider and as a DS. So yeah, it's just good seeing a team that's looking healthy, that's kind of sustainable. It's been around for ages. I don't quite know how long, but I know Primera, the shop, has been around for a very long time. That's a really
interesting thing as well. When you have teams that are around for a long time at a certain level, and then just all of a sudden, like, something clicks in them, and they go like, okay, I want to step up, and suddenly, maybe it's just the case of getting 2 or 3 riders in for whatever reason who are capable of winning that level, and it like reinvigorates the team. And it's like, okay, yeah, we can actually top 5 in these, and maybe on our day we can win. I mean, Josh Housley, as you said, he's a top rider. David, 5th in the National Hill Climb. I mean, chuck him on something like Lancaster or Lincoln Grand Prix. If it comes together in a more of a sprint, like, things could go their way on the day, couldn't they?
Exactly. And they signed a few other riders as well. So they've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 new signings for next year. And it's still quite early. I was looking through some of the other elite teams, and no one else has quite announced this kind of wrath of new signings, and they've re-signed a lot of their riders. They had probably 2021 coming out of lockdown. They had a really good year with Conor McCordrick. Yeah. That was his first year racing out of being a rower, and he basically just won every race that he entered, and then went on to Richardson Trek, because I think that was a bit more local to him. Yeah, but yeah, I think it's good to see them do well.
Interesting you mentioned Conor, because I think he's just taken a step back from the sport. It didn't seem to indicate that he was like stopping entirely. It seemed to indicate that he was just taking a break.
Yeah,
I don't know what that.
I feel like when you're racing at such a level. Did he win the RAS in Ireland, or did he just win a stage?
I can't remember if he won that. I want to say he did, but
I think he won a stage, and then one of the Foran guys won it this year. Sorry,
yeah.
the name
he wore
escapes
yellow,
me.
didn't he?
Sorry?
I thought Conor wore yellow.
Yeah, I think he's definitely led it, and he's definitely won a stage, whether or not he won the whole thing. Anyway, another team, actually a team that was up there a lot this year was Moonglow. Next year they become Moonglow Spatswear. Spats, kind of like a cult company. You'll see in the winter, probably half of all the people you see out training have their overshoes, their kind of calf-high, knee-high overshoes. Just a really good British company. Nice to see them supporting a team. Hopefully they kick on. They've got a really distinctive pink kit.
Yeah, if I remember correctly, Moonglow sort of rose from the ashes a bit of the old Ribble Weltite team. I think
is that where they came from? I was looking back. They don't have any posts further back than this year, so
yeah,
I was trying to work out who they were.
I think it was Jack Rees, part of the management, and he used to be part of the management of Ribble Weltite.
Yes.
If I'm getting this wrong, somebody will definitely correct me, but probably Jack Rees will see this and be like, "You're an idiot." But I think that was it, and then they switched and changed the identity of Ribble Weltite. And but to be honest, that's a good thing. Like a phoenix rising from the ashes. Moonglow, a distinctive kit. They've clearly got ideas and designs of being, maybe stepping back up to that level. Spatswear are cool. title sponsor, because they've been involved in a lot of teams, but never as a big name. Does this mean that Spatswear are like going in hard on like full team kit?
Yeah. I was thinking that you'd imagine that they're going to have to make something quite aero. I know they've stretched into full body, like tops and bottoms and all sorts. So hopefully they make something quite quick. But yeah, just good to see another British company put some money behind a healthy team.
Yeah, exactly.
Talking about Conor McGoldrick quickly, stepping back. Somebody else that similar sort of level of rider that's stepping back is Damien Clayton. After having a very good year this year, I remember him kind of rising up through his local team. Then he was on Canyon, won a UCI in France, and then came back and been racing for Le Col for the last year or so. He's stepping back, hanging up his wheels.
Oh, really? So is he kind of fully stepping back?
It looked like it. It looked pretty definite. You'll recognise him because he's been racing around in that stupid POC helmet that's like a half-head TT helmet.
It goes really well with he has quite a sleek-looking black skin suit, doesn't he?
He looks quick and is quick. I don't think I'm quite quick enough to justify wearing something that looks like that. But Damien definitely is.
Harry's fashion police needs to be a segment on this podcast in the future, then, doesn't it?
It's okay if you're fast enough. So if you can justify it, then it's fine. Like if you're coming last every week, maybe not. I just want to bring up Oro, British bike manufacturer. They've recently secured some new investment. You sent me this link. What was this? What is this?
Oro were a brand that I think they were just about to go under. And they had Wiggins as an ambassador. And every time Wiggins is involved, it always piques my interest because I'm like, hang on a sec. While he's had his troubles, and obviously he's, I think famously, he's fighting bankruptcy right now. His name carries a lot of weight, and anywhere that he's visible is a place that may attract more investment, as we've seen with Oro, the bike brand, and Train Sharp getting in there as well. These are big brands and big names that have supported the British scene for a long time and very publicly. And it just made me think, okay, maybe there are other companies seeing the worth of the British scene and wanting to get invested in it. But we'll have to wait and see whether that's actually the case, I think. I'd love to see, do you remember the old Wiggins kit and the old Wiggins team?
Yeah, of course. That was back when I was kind of first getting into it, when he was... I don't really remember watching him at the Tour de France, but I definitely remember watching him when he was on Team Wiggins. That's when I first started kind of following cycling. So I remember that team quite well.
Because he funded that team, and that team brought in people like Tom Pidcock. Gave them the opportunity.
It did also bankrupt him. That's why he's bankrupt. So.
I was going to dance around that subject, but it must be because it was a very professional setup, and that's going to cost a lot of money.
Yeah, I think he put a lot of money into that. He's talked about it quite a bit, but he basically spent his money quite badly.
Yes.
I think the majority of that being into a team.
But think about the good things that team has done. The positive side of it.
I think it's not better than other things you can waste your money on.
That's true. That is true.
Do you like Oros? Have you ridden one?
Never ridden one. Absolutely never. It'd be interesting to ride one and see.
I've only heard. I don't think they're the prettiest bikes, but I've only heard good things about people riding them.
That's interesting.
So, I think that's a good.
It's only a good thing, isn't it?
A good support. British Conti. So Denny over at British Conti put together a great article recently. Detailing, along with Seb Otley, who is another local to me race organiser, who has done for a few years, but he's organised the formerly known Goodwood Road Race, which is now the Fat Creations Road Race, down on the Goodwood course from the 1982 World Champs, where the Italian guy won. He beat Greg LeMond up there.
We had that in Goodwood. I did not know that.
Yeah, yeah, should what? I can't remember. It's either 82 or 86, something like that. One of the 80s.
Wow. It's the first
It's got
thing
to be.
I've heard
Yeah, it's got to
about
be one of the 80s if Greg LeMond was doing well.
Mm.
Isn't the Italian was like Sriracha or something? Something like that. I can't remember.
I have no idea. I'm going to go away and watch this.
But Denny has put together a very detailed article of the costs of a National B road race in the UK. And I just want to draw out a few. So firstly, he's put together a table at the end of the article. And there's it's very easy to forget the amount of different things that cost money. So in short, the whole thing costs around 4.5 to 5.5, depending on what year. The costs are rising for next year quite substantially. But you've got stuff, so you've got event registration with BC, you've got levies that we'll dive into a little bit later, you have to pay to British Cycling, you've got prize funds that you have to pay, you've got to buy the race numbers, you've got to buy the signage, rent the headquarters, portable toilets, the race comms, the escorts that are on bicycles, not bicycles, motorbikes,
Yeah.
marshals, medical cover, insurance, fuel for the people driving in the convoy. You got food, prize money, more prize money, chip timing. If you want to use that, that's a bit of an optional one. But it's just easy to forget how much stuff, and that's without accounting for the hours that you have to put into it. So these total up the amount of hours is about 300 man hours or woman hours that you have to put into planning these races.
Yeah.
So that's like 600, not 600 quid, 6 grand in time, basically.
Yeah. The worrying thing as well, cycling is famously a volunteer-led sport in the UK, and I think that's the same across the world. It's famously quite a volunteer-led sport at the grassroots level, and seeing that huge volunteer time cost that goes into it, and I'm sure it's not just Seb, the organizer, having to put that time in.
Oh no, of course not.
Yeah,
It's
loads of people. And next year the costs are projected to rise. Everything's risen anyway due to inflation, particularly post-COVID. Costs of everything seems to have gone up. But the British cycling levies are going up, so rather than having a small profit this year that could then be reinvested or just cover time, they're projected to make a £500 loss, which on a 5.5 grand budget for a volunteer effort, that's a large chunk of money to lose alongside your time, isn't it? It is. Do you know Seb well? What drives him? Because he's reviving these brilliant races.
Well, he's similar to you in that is that it's just for the love of the sport. I don't think any race organizer, unless you're Proudhon, organising the Tour de France, is doing it to get paid. There's no money to be made here.
No,
I don't think there are any people that think race organisers are out just kind of. You see a 60 quid entry to a National B or something like that, and you think, oh, they're just scamming me. It's not the race organisers. I just want to clarify that. But I think you draw from this, and you read that this is not sustainable. You cannot. Obviously, you can't sustain races at a loss, and you can't sustain races long term if the race entries keep going up every year to 70 quid, 80 quid, 90 quid. One of the big reasons that I don't race every week at these road races is that I can't afford it. If I'm paying 45 quid for an entry and I'm paying fuel to get there aren't enough kind of locally anyway, because the races aren't sustainable, so the races are disappearing. So you have to drive further to get to a race. Then if you're driving further enough, you have to stay somewhere overnight. So I think, obviously, in an ideal world, you'd have a sponsor. You'd have a title sponsor that comes in and is 5 grand, or even just enough to make it barely profitable, 2 grand. And I think that's where British Cycling can step in and make it more sustainable. And I think this is where you have to focus. If you're British Cycling and you want a sustainable, healthy grassroots racing scene, you have to give these races access to these sponsors. How you do that, I don't know. But ideally, you'd be a race organiser like Seb. You go to British Cycling. I've got this race. It's costing me 5.5 grand. I'm going to make a £500 loss. I need £2,000 of sponsorship. British Cycling then go, great, we've got this network of sponsors that we have great relationships with that are looking to invest in like races with a return that you can give at one event, and then just pick one. I think that would be a pretty good way to do it.
Marketplace.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's really interesting, actually. I never thought of that idea, because often it is this case of like, oh, British cycling should do something. Like, and the answer is like, do what? And that's actually a really good, like, cast iron sort of idea that they could take away and do. Because like you've got something like Lloyd's. Now Lloyd's gets to slap their name over a lot of things, but not any grassroots events. And if Seb or another organiser were able to go to British Cycling and say, hey, can we do this? And British Cycling maybe just say, yeah, we've actually got, and I think they have started doing this fund. I've not looked into it too much because it doesn't really affect me, and maybe this is one for me to look at. It's like, hey, we've got this race, it's £500 loss. Have you got the pot of money already? Could just be a pot that's almost ring fenced sitting there. Or as you say, yeah, we've got this network of however many sponsors, just have at them, you know. They are all warm and all want to do it. Because otherwise I can't see a way for these, you know, I'm just looking at these costs again.
Because, I mean, these races could get sponsors. I think that'd be quite easy to offer a return, have some sort of video production, but it would just take more time from volunteers, which obviously they don't have, because they're they're employees that have full-time work doing normal people stuff. That you can't just be like, okay, take another 100 hours out to organise sponsors and like a return. And I think another thing that would help as well, a lot of stuff that puts organisers off, or a big thing that puts organisers off is, you know, if it gets cancelled, or if something happens, or if not enough people enter, or the cost just goes up a little bit higher, that they can't afford to make £1,000 loss. There's not a lot of people that can afford to just lose £1,000 organising a race. So if BC had some sort of like, you know, sign this contract, ideally you'd make a profit in the race, but if you don't make a profit, BC will cover it, or cover half. I think those are actionable things that British Cycling can do, like, immediately, basically. It would just take British Cycling employing one person, potentially, to oversee it. Rather than taking away more time from organisers that doesn't exist.
I'd love to see the breakdown of the numbers as well. Like, how many National B or regional races are there that British Cycling might have to support? You know, because not all of them are going to make a loss. Some of them, I'm sure, make a profit, and you know, they've worked out a model that works for them. Seb's races are they're quite good races, you know, which incurs a bit more cost. But if there were like 100 races in the year, and British Cycling only had to lump in £500 to make it worthwhile for every sponsor, for every race, that's not an insane amount of money. Like, it's a lot of money, but for a national governing body with the pockets that British Cycling has, it's not an insane amount of money. And sometimes it does feel like they forget about the very grassroots, you know, and the grassroots racing that does work as a gateway for people to get involved in the sport more, because those people then become organisers and volunteers, and they help the sport grow, not just the Tour of Britain.
Exactly. I don't think that's a controversial thing to say either. I mean, like, the easy thing to take away from this, which everyone will take away, is races are too expensive. And you can just sit there and complain, which is easy and understandable. I don't blame anyone for just sat there complaining. But that doesn't do anything. You can't just sit here and complain. I think we've been doing it long enough. We are complaining long enough. Like, the problems have been around a decade. Like, we know what they are. We understand the problem. I think it's just time to do something actionable, and talk about how that can be fixed. But the big thing that I want to talk about is event levies. So from 2025, Seb is going to have to pay British Cycling directly almost £800 just to organise the event. Like, surely. So this levy will cover it just makes it an official event through British Cycling. Basically, it covers some sort of insurance. I don't know, just pays British Cycling. I'm not sure exactly how that's broken down within British Cycling, but surely that can be cut down. There doesn't seem to be any attempt at making that any cheaper through work within British Cycling. I'll happily be proven wrong, but from the outside, it looks like they're just like, yeah, whatever. Get on with it, pay us.
I'm very concerned, actually, looking at these numbers, because obviously I run the Cambridge Criterium. It's a national A, so it's as high as you can get without being part of the national series. I've not had a look yet at what these levy changes do to our one, because we were already over 50% more expensive than this race. Our levies this year were around £800-900. If they're going to push up to over £1,000, I'm going to start getting concerned, because we've already got a humongous budget for that race. I'd rather not have, in this case, a 50% increase in our levies, especially when an event like the Cambridge Criterium is, and not just that, Sheffield, Otley, Ilkley, all these large races that have a real media footprint and a physical footprint in kind of large cities. If you're suddenly being stung with even bigger levies, you're like, well, hang on, what about the positive effect we're having on British cycling and doing that? We're getting stung for putting on what is a good race for cycling in the country. I'm concerned. I'm slightly concerned. Let's put it that way.
It's not great, is it?
No. And it's, it's harder for a guy like Seb or any other national or regional race organizer to swallow those costs, especially if you're doing it, as you say, as a volunteer. I know British Cycling's had the squeeze, but everyone's having a squeeze right now, and you can't just shunt that onto the people with the smallest shoulders, effectively, who are the local race organisers.
Yeah. Well said. I mean, obviously, I think it is a bit obvious, but running it through. So, I don't know what Seb's planning to do next year, but the obvious conclusion is you have to charge more for race entry. The race entry goes up more, less people enter. Maybe the next year you do it again, less people enter. The race can't go ahead. The race disappears and never comes back. That's it.
Seb's already.
That's what I mean when it's not sustainable. These races will just vanish, and they won't be able to come back. The effort to start a race from scratch is huge compared to the already massive task of organising a race every year. So something needs to be done. So
yeah.
Whoever has the power to do that, please do that. Let's stop being so negative, Owen. Let's talk about riders going to World Tour. So there was a Cycling Weekly. Was it Cycling Weekly? It was
Maybe,
Cycling Weekly article about Ollie Stockwell, who's the latest British rider to go World Tour to Bahrain. Who are they at the moment? Victorious?
Bahrain Victorious. Yeah.
Yes, from their Conti team. And Ollie Stockwell's a bit of he's kind of flown under the radar. There's been a lot of British riders that kind of pop up in the World Tour without really being known riders, I guess. Which I think was a pretty good thing.
Yeah, it's interesting. We spoke a bit about this last week, but the GB Senior Academy. It looks like Ollie's team. I was just looking through his previous teams here. Bahrain Victorious Dev team this year, and cycling team Friuli. Sorry, my Italian is terrible. I remember an old friend of mine.
Friuli.
My Italian, man, is bad. I'm just going to step out.
That is the Bahrain Victorious Conti team, by the way.
Oh, is it?
Yeah, there's
CTF. Yeah. So he spent 3 years with them, and before that he was with the GB Senior Cycling Academy. GB Cycling Senior Academy, and I think that was in the last year before they folded and were no more. But that's the quality of rider, that was stepping up through this, and he had to go to Italy to continue his development, but he was incredible. He's now racing on a World Tour team, and I think looping back to that discussion, that's what we lose by losing the GB Academy. that stepping stone, because not everybody is going to have the opportunity to go and live abroad for 3 years and race. That the academy gave him the opportunity to do. Interesting as well. Ribble Pro Cycling under 19 as well. Way back when he was a young rider, and it just shows these systems that are in place under the radar in the British scene from companies like Ribble, Thomas Mean earlier, like Hope, who are in a way picking up the slack a little bit. But really positive to see Ollie Stockwell stepping up. And you mentioned a result in particular was the Ronda de Lizard, wasn't it? That was a good one.
The Ronda Lizard.
Ronda de Lizard.
Yeah, I think it's not normal to be 3 years on the development team for a World Tour team. Like, that's quite long, and it's quite impressive that he's managed to kind of stick through it and keep improving after the kind of 2 years missing out on a promotion to finally pick it up. Yeah, good for him. Hopefully, as with all British riders, hopefully he kicks on and does well. Yeah, I mean he's 22. He's born 2 years after me. My God.
Why aren't you riding for Bahrain, man?
Oh, I got this to do.
Of course, I'll let you off.
Yeah, it'd be interesting to chat to him as well. Kind of.
Yeah, it'd be great to know again
years.
that the motivation, to stick at it for so long in a foreign team, in another country, and to actually succeed and to make it. And it's that's a really good team to go to. It's got winners, people you can learn off of. So it might just fly under the radar, and suddenly in 3 years' time we're going like, oh yeah, Ollie Stockwell's top 5 in this World Tour race.
Who knows? Talking of not little. Talking about continental teams. Sorry, continental teams. INEOS, it's very heavily rumoured, almost confirmed, that INEOS Grenadiers will have a development team for next year, and it's not a British development team. They're essentially partnering with an already established German development team called Team Lotto Kernhaus PSD Bank. As far as I know, it's a decent setup. They've had Kim Hajduk go through the ranks, who's now on Red Bull at the moment. Oh god, I can't remember. But he's very strong. I think was he on INEOS actually? Is that where the link? Oh no, he's on INEOS. So maybe that's where the link.
It's the first of
was already
already
established.
How do you feel about that, Harry?
How do I feel about what?
INEOS dev team not being British.
I mean, it's just a bit weird, isn't it?
I think that is exactly it. They can do whatever they want, but it just feels a bit odd. Like, why wouldn't you? You've got a British owner, British history. It's held up as the pinnacle of, it's a British World Tour team. I mean, I can think of a UCI team in Trinity who might want it. I've got no idea the setup. Maybe they got approached. Trinity have their own thing, don't they, as an agency? Maybe they got approached and said no. Or maybe you could just set up your own dev team and fill that space.
I think, as much as it is a little bit weird, I still think it's a very good, a very good thing. So I saw this on Reddit, and the first comment on Reddit is that this is very good news because it's the first indication all year that Ratcliffe, the guy that owns INEOS and INEOS Grenadiers, isn't going to pull the plug on the operation and is invested both monetarily and just with his time in the team, which is a good point. I hadn't actually thought of that before. I was going to complain that it wasn't British. Yeah, it is a good sign. Obviously, we want it. It's fun to bash on INEOS and has been for the last year, but we don't want them to vanish.
Exactly. Yeah.
So, as long as they stick around.
That's an interesting point, though, because INEOS, I think, the team, as far as I know, is like wholly owned by INEOS, the company.
It's just owned by Ratcliffe.
It's a plaything for them. It's tiny, so it's very easy now that Ratcliffe is running, has this minority stake in Man United. He's got sailing as well that they compete in,
and the F1,
and the Formula One, of course. These are huge sports with a huge return. He could just drop cycling and go like, man, that's way too much hassle. So the dev team indicates that they're in it for the long haul, maybe.
Ooh.
That would be nice. And actually, we say about it being a German team. Germany and the UK are both first world countries. They have great ties. They have great first world countries. Hot take. They're both developed nations. They I don't even know why I said first world countries, but they work great together. They have a lot of like common sort of, I don't know, like commonalities between them. So it's not so ridiculous for a British rider to step over to a German team. Like I speak a little bit of German. I have German family. Like if I was a young rider and I wanted to become a pro and I knew that INEOS had a dev team based in Germany, it wouldn't be such a stretch for me to aim for that team and just, use my German. Most young kids in the UK are kind of given German as an option to learn that language. So while it's one step removed, it's not an impossible step to make, is it?
No. Yeah. Good thing. Harry approved. I'm sure they'll be pleased to know.
Seal. Yeah, Jim Ratcliffe's going to love that.
I'll DM him afterwards. Tour de France, not in the UK, but it is relevant to the UK because ITV will no longer be televising the Revolution, the Tour de France, because Discovery, Eurosport, who else are they called? Like Warner, isn't it Warner Bros?
It's Warner Brothers is the company, yeah, and then they own Discovery and Eurosport. It
was announced in a very positive, congratulatory way that they have exclusive rights to broadcast in the UK, which people very quickly realised. Hang on, that means that ITV doesn't have any rights. Yeah, just a bit of a shame. I think obviously if you put cycling behind a paywall, less people are going to watch it, which is a bad thing in the UK.
Yeah, I feel like I'm getting whiplash today from good news to bad news, good news to bad news. This is undisputably, I think, bad news. I can't see I can fully understand Eurosport wanting this. As a company, great news for them. It makes perfect sense. I think I remember seeing it was Wild Ones podcast with Ned Bolting recently. Us giving Wild Ones a shout out, of course. Small podcast. He put it really well that, it makes sense. He is one directly affected by it because, he was the voice of ITV4's Tour de France coverage for me and for countless others.
I mean, the song is the Tour de France. Like,
that's it, man.
If you're British, they are connected. They're, what is it, synonymous? They are the same thing. It gives me tingles when I hear it. That is,
I would not be here today were it not for that live coverage of the Tour de France that was free to air. I didn't grow up with like Sky or access to Eurosport or anything like that. I had entirely free to air TV.
Oh, you mean you wouldn't be into cycling? I thought you wouldn't. You meant you wouldn't exist.
Well, no. I would exist, man. I would exist, but I wouldn't be in cycling. I don't think I'd be sitting here having put on, races with thousands of spectators, creating content for millions of views. None of that would happen without that free to view coverage of the Tour de France that I grew up on, and it's a real shame. And I hope, in my heart, that this doesn't negatively impact like the sport of cycling in the UK, but I can't see a way that it doesn't. I'm sure you probably grew up watching it as well, didn't you? So
yeah, those highlights. It was the only bit of TV I was allowed to watch in the mornings was the highlights.
Yeah.
From the previous stage before I went to school.
They mentioned Warner Brothers. I think have seen a bit of the kickback to this and said they're exploring some free to view like options. If I remember correctly, Formula One, which is normally paywalled on Sky, Sky has a deal with Channel 4, where Channel 4 has some free-to-view bits. It's effectively like Sky are then sub-licensing it out to Channel 4. Do you think that Warner Brothers would do that to avoid the backlash? Maybe they'd sub-license it to the BBC or to ITV?
No.
Savage.
I don't think like they're such a massive company. I don't think the kickback from a few cyclists like will change what they want to do. Like, they're just gonna-
Yeah. Also,
if they weren't affected from the kickback from shutting down GCN racing, they're not going to be affected from this.
So they're just cold-hearted. Like, cash is where they're going, and this for them is cash.
End stage capitalism. You need to get some. Need to get a bit of Karl Marx.
Yeah. Hold up the.
Take back the Caesar production.
I don't think we're going to be able to do that against Warner Brothers, man. They're quite a large organisation, but it's a shame. Yeah, it's a real shame for me, and maybe they're saying that you don't need that anymore. Social media is YouTube, and the reach that they get across there it far outweighs the reach that you would get on free-to-air TV. I'm not sure if that's the case, but we'll have to wait and see.
What, they wouldn't have spent money on making an exclusive contract if that was the case.
Yeah, we can only hope that they've done their maths.
Exactly. Anything else you want to bring up?
No, I think I'm, happy to end on that terrible note.
I mean, I'll still be watching the tour. You
Yeah.
just have to pay for it.
Ugh, terrible,
What a shame.
man.
Talking about stuff you have to pay for, tv.monumentcycling.com.
Yes, tv.monumentcycling.com, man, is if you don't want to put money into the pockets of the multimillionaires and billionaires who run Warner Brothers, but instead you want to put money into the pockets of people who actively try and support a grassroots and domestic level sport.
Unfortunately, you won't
Monument
get to
Cycling
watch
TV.
the Tour de France, though.
I don't think we can buy the rights to that.
But
No,
you
we
do
don't.
get rights to the National Series.
Yes, that's where. So Monument Cycling TV is where we put all of our premium content, whether that's. Did you hear that?
Yes.
Fireworks night. Okay. Monument Cycling TV is where you see all of our premium content, whether that's live streams of the races that we're covering, whether that's extended highlights, whether it's breakdown and analysis. We've got analysis with people like Cat Ferguson and Rowan Baker of their victories in races. And the money that we make from that goes directly into supporting us and supporting the British elite cycling scene. So, if you want to help support that, help support what we do, head on over to tv.monumentcycling.com and sign up now.
Yeah, give us a bit of money. Thank you for watching and listening. This has been episode 5 of the Monument Cycling Podcast. Join us next week, where we're going to talk about some other news, depending on what news happens. Goodbye.
Bye.